He looked like a man who could kill me with his bare hands. The truth was, he could, but every night, he begged me to hold him as if he might break. That contradiction was the first thing that both terrified me and tied me to him like a secret I could never shake. The world outside saw Captain Nathaniel Hayes as the embodiment of unshakable strength. He was the Special Forces officer who had dragged 3 soldiers out of a burning Humvee, the man who walked back into enemy fire because he refused to leave a body behind, the kind of hero news anchors praised with trembling voices. But I knew better. I had heard his voice at 2 in the morning. Rough from battlefields, he still fought in his head, whispering, "Don't leave me, please." We met in the least cinematic way possible. Not at a bar, not through friends, not even in some grand act of destiny. No, I met him because my radiator broke in the middle of a New York winter, and I was shivering in the hallway while waiting for my landlord, when the apartment door across mine opened and a half-dressed man with a buzz cut scowled at me. That was Nate, angry at the cold, angry at his insomnia, angry at the world. Yet when his eyes lingered on me a second too long, I saw something I couldn't unsee. The loneliness etched beneath all that armor. I should have walked away. Men like Nate were warnings, not invitations. But there was something about the way his hand lingered on the doorframe, as though opening his door for me cost him more than battle ever had, that made me whisper, "Your place warmer than mine?" That night, I sat on his couch in borrowed sweatpants, sipping the worst cup of instant coffee I'd ever had. He didn't talk much, just grunted in response to my attempts at conversation. Yet his eyes betrayed him. They kept flicking to me like he was memorizing my presence, afraid I'd vanish if he blinked too long. The first time he let me touch him was accidental. My hand brushed against his wrist as I passed him the mug, and he froze. For a second I thought he'd snap, but instead, his eyes closed, and he inhaled like a drowning man catching air. That was when I knew this soldier, this lion, carried a wound deeper than flesh could show. And damn me, I wanted to be the one to soothe it. Over the weeks, his defenses crumbled in ways that startled even him. He still barked orders at me sometimes, still tried to play the hardened soldier, but his body betrayed him in the softest ways. When he slept on the couch, his hand always reached blindly toward the space where I usually sat, as if his body refused to rest unless it knew I was near. It was one night, after too much whiskey and too many unsaid things, that his facade shattered completely. "You think I'm strong," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "Everyone does. But you don't know what it's like to wake up with blood on your hands, to remember every face you couldn't save. You don't know what it's like to hold yourself together all day just to beg a stranger not to let go of you at night." He wasn't looking at me when he said it. His head was bowed, his fists clenched, like confessing weakness was worse than dying. But I did know. I knew because I had lost my brother overseas, in a war Nate himself had bled through. I knew because grief leaves fingerprints on your bones, and loneliness carves hollows no metal can fill. So I didn't say a word. I just reached out and pulled him into my arms. At first, he resisted, his body stiff, his pride raging. But then he collapsed against me, shaking, his breath ragged against my neck. That was the first night I heard him whisper my name like a prayer. Of course, the world wasn't kind enough to let us live in our little bubble. Secrets don't stay secrets, especially when one half of the secret wears a uniform built on discipline and expectations. His team started noticing. His late nights, his softened edges, the way he carried himself not like a man on constant alert but like someone who finally had a reason to breathe. The rumors spread, sharp as knives. "You'll ruin me," he told me one night, his hand trembling on my jaw even as his lips hovered over mine. "If they find out, I'll lose everything I bled for. And if you keep living a lie," I whispered back, "you'll lose yourself first." It was cruel, maybe, unfair. But it was true. The danger wasn't only from within his ranks. There were enemies who hadn't forgotten Nate Hayes. Men who remembered the missions, who remembered the name of the soldier who'd hunted them down and left scars that never healed. And when you're a hero, your shadow stretches far enough for others to hide in. The first time I realized how real that danger was, I came home to find my apartment door ajar. Inside, nothing was stolen, but on the kitchen table sat a single bullet, polished to a shine. Nate's face when he saw it was the same face he wore in the battlefield pictures I'd seen: stone, cold, murderous. Except this time, the battlefield was my living room, and the life at stake was mine. "You're mine now," he said that night. Not like a declaration, but like a vow. His arms were tight around me, his breath harsh in my ear. "They'll have to go through me first." But as I held him back, I realized something with terrifying clarity. They already had. That was just the beginning. When you wake up with a bullet on your kitchen table, you stop pretending life is ordinary. I tried to convince myself it was just a message, just intimidation. But Nate knew better. His body went into soldier mode, checking locks, scanning windows, his hand hovering near the pistol he kept hidden under his jacket. Every muscle in him screamed that the war he thought he'd left behind had just found its way into my apartment. "You need to leave," he told me, voice clipped. "Stay at a hotel. Stay anywhere but here. I'll take care of this." But the moment those words left his mouth, I snapped. "So that's it? You'll bury yourself in this alone again, like you always do? Nate, if this bullet is for you, then it's for me too. Don't you get it? You brought me into your world the second you let me hold you." His jaw clenched, his eyes darting away. For once, the soldier who looked unshakable seemed lost. "You don't understand what following me means," he muttered. "They don't play by rules. They don't care who you are. They'll tear you apart just to get to me. And what do you think will happen if they do?" I whispered. "You'll be the one torn apart, piece by piece, blaming yourself for the rest of your life." "Nate, I'm not leaving." He stared at me then, like he was seeing me not as the man who curled into his arms at night, but as someone capable of standing beside him, no matter how bloody the path ahead. And something in his eyes broke. For the first time, he didn't argue. The next weeks were a blur of tension. Nate's presence in my apartment became constant. His boots by the door, his jacket draped across my chair, his pistol resting within arm's reach. It should have been suffocating. Instead, it felt like a strange, fragile kind of home. But danger has a way of infecting everything. Nights that once belonged to whispered confessions and trembling tenderness now carried the weight of paranoia. Every creak in the hallway, every shadow crossing the window drew Nate's hand to his weapon. Yet in those moments, when his chest rose and fell too fast, when sweat slicked his temples though the night was cold, I learned something vital. The battlefield never truly leaves a soldier. It lingers in the corners of every quiet room, waiting to strike. And yet, amid all of it, there were still moments that stole my breath. Like the night I found him sitting on my fire escape, cigarette smoke curling around his silhouette, staring at the city like it was both enemy and lover. "You ever think about running away?" I asked quietly, leaning out the window. He chuckled bitterly. "A soldier doesn't run." "That's not what I asked." He turned to me then, eyes shadowed but soft. "Every damn day." I climbed out to sit beside him, the winter air biting my skin. Without thinking, I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. For a man who carried the world's weight on his shoulders, that tiny surrender was louder than any declaration. But surrender is dangerous, and someone was watching. Started small. A car parked too long across the street. A phone call that cut to static the second I answered. Then one night, as we walked back from the corner store, Nate's hand tightened around mine so suddenly it hurt. "Don't look," he murmured. "But we're being followed." My stomach dropped. I wanted to ask what we should do, but before I could, Nate's arm was around me, steering me into an alley with terrifying precision. He shoved me against the wall, his body caging mine. From a distance, we must have looked like lovers lost in heat. But his lips brushed my ear as he hissed. "3 men. Coming closer. On my mark, you run back to the apartment. Don't stop. Don't look back." "No," I whispered fiercely. "I'm not leaving you." For a split second, rage flashed in his eyes. But the knit was gone, replaced by something rawer. Fear. Not for himself, but for me. And then the men were there. The fight was brutal, fast, and silent. Nate moved like liquid steel, fists and elbows colliding with bone. One man crumpled. Another staggered back, blood spraying from his nose. The third pulled a knife, and I froze until Nate's roar split the night, and the man was on the ground, choking on his own breath. I had never been so terrified, and I had never loved him more. When it was over, Nate stood panting, blood spattered across his shirt. His knuckles split, his chest heaving. He turned to me, eyes blazing. "This is what I am," he said hoarsely. "This is the world you're asking to step into. You still think you can survive it?" I should have said no. I should have told him I wanted my quiet life back, my safe walls and silent nights. But instead, I stepped forward, pressing my trembling hand to his bloody cheek. "Not without you." And in that alley, surrounded by unconscious bodies, he kissed me like a dying man finding oxygen. The fallout was inevitable. Reports were filed. Questions were asked. Nate's superiors started sniffing around, their suspicion sharpening with every passing day. He'd already been on thin ice, his temper, his unorthodox methods, his refusal to play politics. Now, with whispers about a civilian attachment and unexplained brawls in the city, he was dangling by a thread. "You should cut me loose," he said one night, his voice heavy. "Let me drown before I drag you down with me." But what he didn't understand was that he wasn't dragging me anywhere. He was teaching me how to fight. The real breaking point came 2 weeks later. I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. My heart seized, but when I pushed inside, it wasn't an enemy waiting. It was Nate, sitting on my couch, his face in his hands. "They gave me an ultimatum," he muttered without looking up. "Choose the job, or choose you." The silence that followed was suffocating. "And what did you say?" I finally managed. He lifted his head, eyes burning with anguish. I walked out. My breath hitched, because that meant he had lost everything, his career, his identity, the only life he'd ever known. But before I could speak, he was on his feet, grabbing my shoulders like I was the only thing holding him together. "Tell me I didn't make a mistake. Tell me Thesusis worth it." And I did. With every fiber of me, I did. But we were fools to think the world would let us go that easily. The men who had followed us weren't finished. They were part of something bigger, an enemy that wanted Nate broken, wanted him destroyed, maybe even wanted him dead. And by choosing me, Nate had given them the perfect weapon. One night, when the city was drowning in rain, they came for us. And this time, running wasn't an option. The night they came for us was a night New York seemed to bleed. Rain lashed against the windows, the storm howling through alleys like a warning. Nate's instincts had been on edge all evening, every sound making his head snap toward the door, every shadow turning his muscles into iron. I had grown used to the rhythm of his paranoia, half soldier, half lover, but that night his tension felt different. His silence was heavy, the kind that presses against your ribs until you can't breathe. When the first crash came, a window shattering down the hall, my blood froze. Nate was already moving. His gun was in his hand before I could blink, his voice low and sharp. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, you stay with me." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him I wasn't some fragile thing that needed protecting. But the look in his eyes, the kind of fear only a soldier who's seen too many deaths could carry, stole the words from me. The apartment door burst open. 3 men stormed in, shadows cut sharp against the lightning outside. Their faces were masked, their weapons glinting. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then Nate became someone else. He moved like a storm, precise and brutal. The first man fell before I even registered the shot. The second lunged, knife flashing, but Nate twisted. The blade, missing by an inch before his elbow, slammed into the man's jaw with a sickening crack. The third man grabbed me, yanking me back. For a split second, panic-blinded Muntal, Nate's roar tore through the room. "Touch him and you die." I don't know if it was his voice or the sheer rage behind it, but the man hesitated. It was enough. I slammed my elbow back, felt the air leave his lungs, and stumbled free just as Nate's boot sent him crashing into the wall. The silence that followed was deafening. Rain hammered the broken window. Blood smeared across the floor. And Nate, me invincible, unshakable Nate, stood trembling, his chest heaving, his hand still locked around the gun like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Then his knees buckled. I caught him before he hit the ground, my hands slick with his blood. "Nate, oh God, it's not bad," he rasped, even as crimson spread across his shirt. Just a cut." He was lying. The gash along his side was deep, ugly, bleeding fast. My throat tightened as fear clawed at me. "You're not allowed to leave me," I whispered fiercely, pressing my hand to the wound. "Not after everything. You hear me? You're mine, Nathaniel Hayes. Mine." His hand found mine, weak but steady. His eyes, glassy with pain, locked on me. That's the only reason I'm still breathing. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by him on the couch, pressing towels to his side, whispering nonsense just to keep him awake. Every time his eyelids fluttered, panic ripped through me. When dawn finally broke, pale light bleeding through the storm clouds, Nate stirred. He was alive, bruised, broken, but alive. And I realized with brutal clarity, if I lost him, there would be nothing left of me. But survival came at a cost. The men who had come weren't random. They were hunting Nate, and now they knew me too. "They won't stop," he said quietly later that morning. His face was pale, his voice ragged. "They'll keep coming until one of us is dead." "So what do we do?" I asked. His eyes met mine, steel beneath the exhaustion. "We stop running." The plan was reckless. It was insane. It was Nate. He knew who they were, mercenaries tied to an old mission gone wrong. Men who had sworn revenge on the soldier who had dismantled their operation. Nate had always known they'd come back. He just hadn't expected them to use me as leverage. "I won't let them take you," he said, his hand cupping the back of my neck, his forehead pressed to mine. I'd burn the whole damn city down first. And I believed him. But I also knew the truth. He couldn't fight them alone. Not this time. So I made a choice. A dangerous, stupid, heart-wrenching choice. I reached out to someone I swore I never would, my brother's old commanding officer. The man who had called me the night my brother died overseas. The man who hated Nate for reasons he'd never admit. Colonel Reeves. When I explained, Reeves's silence on the other end of the phone was long, suffocating. Finally, he said, "You're a fool for being with him. But if Hayes is being hunted, he won't last without backup." "I don't care about him lasting," I snapped. "I care about him living." Another pause. Then, "I'll see what I can do." When I told Nate what I had done, he exploded. "You went to Reeves?" Of all people, Reeves. His fists slammed the table, his voice raw with fury. "He'll use you, he'll use me, and he'll get us both killed. He'll get us both alive." I shot back. "And I'd rather risk that than sit here waiting for the next bullet to show up on our table." For a moment I thought he'd walk out. His chest heaved, his jaw locked, his eyes burning like wildfire. But then something inside him cracked. His shoulders slumped, his hands trembled, and he whispered, "You'll be the death of me." I stepped closer, pressing my hand over his heart. "No, I'll be the reason you live." And for the first time since the storm began, he kissed me like he believed it. The meeting with Reeves happened in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Typical military drama. Nate paced like a caged animal, his eyes never leaving the shadows, while I stood by him, my pulse racing. When Reeves finally appeared, his presence was as suffocating as I remembered, tall, cold, his stare sharp enough to cut. His gaze flicked between us, lingering on the way Nate's hand brushed against mine. Disapproval darkened his face, but he didn't comment. "You want protection?" Reeves said flatly. "Then you do this my way. Otherwise, you're both already dead." Nate bristled, every muscle in him coiled. But I touched his arm, grounding him. For once, he didn't shake me off. "Fine," Nate said through gritted teeth. "Your way." Reeves's smirk was thin, humorless. "Good, because they're coming faster than you think. And next time, they won't miss." The days that followed blurred into preparation. Weapons, safe houses, coded phone calls. I should have been terrified, and I was, but I also felt something else. Clarity. For the first time, I wasn't just a bystander in Nate's war. I was part of it. But war doesn't wait for readiness. It happened on a Thursday night. We were supposed to meet Reeves again, finalize the plan. But as Nate and I stepped out of the car, the air split with gunfire. Bullets shattered glass. Tires screamed. Men poured from the shadows, masks and rifles gleaming under the streetlights. It wasn't a meeting. It was a trap. Nate's arm yanked me down, shielding me as we hit the asphalt. Gunshots ripped the air. Too close, too loud. My ears rang. My vision blurred, but Nate's voice was steady, fierce. "Stay with me. Don't let go." And in that chaos, with fire raining from the dark, I realized the truth. This wasn't just Nate's war anymore. It was ours. Gunfire is louder when your heart is breaking. The trap had closed in seconds. Reeves was nowhere to be seen, and Nate understood before I did this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a purge. The men who came weren't hired killers. They were soldiers. His own kind. Reeves sold us out, Nate spat, pulling me behind a rusted truck as bullets ricocheted around us. His face was pale but steady, his body a shield even as the air filled with smoke and screams. He wants me dead. He wants you gone. And he'll bury us under the same dirt if he can. I wanted to argue, to deny it, but the truth was there in front of me. Reeves hadn't been helping us. He had been corralling us, cornering us. So this was it. Nate's past. My naivety. Our love all colliding in one storm of fire. Tell me what to do, I whispered, gripping his arm, shaking. I can't just hide. His eyes found mine, wild and blazing with something desperate. Stay alive. That's all that matters. No, I snapped, voice breaking. What matters is we do this together. And for a moment, just a single heartbeat, he let me see the terror, the love, the plea. Then he nodded. Together. The fight was chaos. Nate moved like a force of nature, his body remembering every battlefield, every scar. But there were too many. Every shot he fired, two more came back. Every step forward felt like the edge of an abyss. And then I saw Reeves, standing at the far end of the warehouse, calm amid the storm, his eyes fixed on Nate like a hunter watching prey. No weapon in his hand, just a cruel satisfaction that burned worse than the bullets. Nate saw him too. His body went rigid, his gun raising. But Reeves didn't flinch. He didn't have to. His men surrounded us, closing in. This ends tonight. Hayes, Reeves called, his voice carrying through the smoke. You've been a liability since the day you put a civilian above your duty. You chose weakness. And weakness doesn't survive in my army. Nate's hand tightened on the gun, but I grabbed his wrist. Don't. That's what he wants. If you kill him, he wins. He proves you're nothing but the monster he says you are. For the first time, Nate hesitated. And that hesitation cost him. A shot rang out. His body jerked. My scream tore from my throat as blood bloomed across his shoulder. He staggered, dropped to one knee, his gun clattering to the floor. I fell with him, hands frantic on his wound. No, 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 don't you dare leave me, not now. Not like this. His lips curved into the faintest smile, even as his breath shook. Still think I'm a monster? You're mine, I sobbed. That's all you'll ever be. Something broke in me then. Fear burned away, replaced by something sharp and unyielding. I grabbed Nate's gun, my hands trembling but steady enough to aim. Reeves laughed when he saw me. Look at you. The little writer who thinks love makes him brave. Do you even know what you're holding? Yes, I said, my voice low. I'm holding the reason he's still alive. The shot rang out before I knew I'd pulled the trigger. Reeves staggered back, shock flashing across his face before he collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. His men froze, their leader gone, their certainty shattered. Some fled. Others lowered their weapons. The battle ended not with victory, but with silence. Hours blurred after that. Sirens wailed. Authorities swarmed. Explanations twisted into half-truths. Reeves's betrayal was buried under red tape. His men scattered into shadows. Nate was rushed to the hospital, his body battered but alive. I stayed by his side through every second. Through the surgeries. Through the beeping machines. Through the nights where I held his hand and whispered stories into the dark. Because silence felt too much like death. And then, one morning, his eyes opened. Hey! He rasped, voice weak but real. I broke. Tears spilled as I kissed his hand, his cheek, his lips. Don't you ever do that to me again. His smile was tired, but it reached his eyes. Wouldn't dream of it. Recovery was slow, painful, but it was ours. Nate wasn't Captain Hayes anymore. The army stripped his name from their walls, erased him from their ranks. To them, he was gone. To me, he was finally free. We left New York months later, packed what little we had and drove west, chasing a horizon neither of us had ever been allowed to imagine. Small towns, cheap motels, stolen kisses in parking lots. Every mile put distance between us and the ghosts that haunted him. One night, in a quiet motel room somewhere in Arizona, I woke to find him watching me. His eyes weren't haunted. They weren't broken. They were soft, steady, alive. "What?" I whispered, smiling. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to mine. "Everyone thinks I'm strong because I never break. But the truth is, you're the only reason I don't." My chest ached with love so fierce it terrified me. "Good," I whispered back, "because I'm never letting you." We weren't heroes. We weren't saints. We were two men who had clawed our way out of fire and blood, who had chosen each other against every rule, every threat, every damn bullet the world threw at us. And in the quiet, in the safety we carved with our own hands, we finally learned the truth. Strength isn't about how hard you fight. It's about who you fight for. And I would fight for him. Always. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.